Hello everyone, welcome back to another session of this Extensions 101 webinar series. So in our previous session, that is the last session, we explored building extensions for Zoho CRM, where we covered an important feature called as custom actions and its significance in building a CRM extension. So in today's session, we are going to be exploring yet another important feature called as Webhooks, and we're going to see how effectively this feature can be incorporated while you're building an extension for Zoho CRM. So we'll be starting off with a quick introduction on what webhooks are, followed by the different steps that are required to create a webhook. And then we'll be seeing the different types of webhooks that are supported while you're building a CRM extension. And finally, we'll conclude with an example use case demonstration of building a Zoho CRM extension where we'll be utilizing the webhooks feature. So this is the agenda that we'll be carrying across in today's session. So let me go ahead and start with the first topic, which is going to be an introduction on webhooks. So what are webhooks? In general, when two applications are integrated, if on occurrence of an event in one application, you would like to receive real-time data about that event in another application, then that can be achieved using this webhooks feature. So for example, let's say Zoho CRM is integrated with Zoho Inventory through an extension. Now consider an invoice has been created in Zoho Inventory. So as soon as this invoice gets created in Zoho Inventory, if you would like to receive real-time data update about this invoice that's created inside your Zoho CRM application in order to process and do some other functionality as part of your CRM application, then that is possible and achievable using this webhooks feature. So webhooks are essentially web callbacks that get triggered on occurrence of an event in one application to provide you with real-time data updates in another application. So for an example, if you just take two apps, let's keep it general, say App A and App B. The application where the event is going to occur, right? That application should have the support for webhook. So only if the application has a support for webhook, the webhook can be created in that application and the event on occurrence of which this webhook has to be triggered can be configured. So once that's done, whenever the event occurs, the real-time data will be automatically sent to the other application that it is integrated with. So just like how the application where the event is going to occur requires the support for webhook, the other application which is going to receive this real-time incoming data should also have the support to receive this real-time data in some format. So this was just an overview on what webhooks are. So next I'm going to go ahead and detail the steps that are required to create a webhook in general. So I'm just taking the two common apps, let's say App A and App B. So for this example, let's just take App B is the application where the event is going to occur. So whenever the event occurs in application B, real-time data is going to be posted to application A. So this means that application B has the support, should have the support for webhooks, right? So because that's the application where the event is going to occur, webhooks has to be supported over here. So let's assume App B has the support for webhooks. So the first step would be to create a webhook in application B. So in order to create an application, create a webhook in application B, there are two major things that need to be configured or defined. So the first thing is going to be configuring the event on occurrence of which this webhook needs to be triggered. So on occurrence of some event in App B only, the data is going to be posted to App A. So that event has to be configured when you're creating the webhook. And the second important thing that you need to configure is going to be a callback URL. So what is this callback URL? So when the event that you're going to configure while you're creating the webhook, right? Whenever that event occurs, you're going to post real-time data to application A. But to which point in application A do you need to post this real-time data? So as I mentioned, the application that's going to receive this real-time incoming data should also have the support to receive the data, right? So that support to receive that real-time incoming data will be in the format of a callback URL. So once you receive this callback URL from application A, that callback URL has to be configured while you're creating the webhook. So the creation of the webhook will require to configure the event on occurrence of which this webhook needs to be triggered and the callback URL, which is going to be the point in application A to which this real-time data will be sent to when the event occurs in App B. So once you define and configure these two things as part of your webhook creation, the webhook will be successfully created. So that's the first step. So ideally, whenever the event occurs in app B, now using the webhook feature, that real-time data will be automatically posted to the callback URL in app B. So the callback URL will receive the real-time data. So in application A, through the callback URL, that real-time data from app B will be received, and based on the real-time data that you're receiving from app B, whatever functionalities you want to perform as part of your application A can be done. So these are the general steps that are required to create a webhook in general. So next we're going to be seeing the different types of webhooks that are supported while you're building a CRM extension. So while you're developing a CRM extension, you have support for both inbound and outbound webhooks. So just like the name suggests, inbound webhooks are going to help you to receive real-time data coming into Zoho CRM. So when will you receive this real-time data into Zoho CRM? So let's say CRM is integrated with a third-party application which has support for webhook. So whenever an event occurs in that third-party application, if you want to receive real-time data from that third-party application into your Zoho CRM, then Zoho CRM has the support to receive that real-time incoming data in the format of inbound webhooks. So similarly, we also have support for outbound webhooks. So just like the name suggests, if you want to send out real-time data from Zoho CRM to another third-party application which it is integrated with, then that can be achieved using this outbound webhooks feature. So when an event is going to occur in Zoho CRM, we have the outbound webhook support using which the real-time data can be automatically posted to the third-party application, considering that the third-party application has the support to receive this real-time data. So we have support when it comes to Zoho CRM extension development, there is support to send out real-time data on occurrence of an event. Similarly, there's also support to receive this real-time incoming data. So these are the different types of webhooks that are supported while you're developing a CRM extension. So for our example use case today, we will be exploring how to go ahead and build an inbound webhook in detail. So our example use case involves the creation of an inbound webhook. So as part of this next slide, I'm going to be jotting down the steps that are required to create an inbound webhook in detail. So as I mentioned, inbound webhook means real-time data is going to be coming into Zoho CRM whenever an event occurs in the third-party application, right? So this means that the third-party application should have the support for webhook. So assuming the third party has the webhook support, the first step would be to create the webhook in your third-party application where the event is going to occur. So as I mentioned in the previous slides, you'll have to configure two things. One is going to be configuring the event on occurrence of which this webhook will be triggered. And the second thing is going to be configuring your callback URL. So here in this case, Zoho CRM is going to be the application which is going to receive this real-time incoming data. So we had seen that inbound webhooks are supported in Zoho CRM, which means we have the support to receive this data in the format of a callback URL. So how can we get this callback URL while you're developing a CRM extension? So we can go ahead and use REST API functions while you're building CRM extensions in order to have this inbound webhook supported to get the real-time incoming data. So in your extension, you can create a REST API function. As soon as you create a REST API function, you will be able to get a URL from that function, which will be the callback URL, which you'll configure while you're creating the webhook in the third-party application. So these REST API functions support inbound webhooks while you're developing a CRM extension. So you're configuring the event on occurrence of which the webhook will be triggered and the callback URL, which is going to be the point in CRM which is going to receive this real-time incoming data. So that callback URL you will be obtaining from a REST API function while you're developing a CRM extension. So once you configure these two things, the webhook will be created. So whenever the event which you've configured, right, while you're creating the webhook, that occurs in the third-party application, that real-time data will be sent to your callback URL, which is essentially going to be a REST API function in CRM. So through this REST API function only, we receive this callback URL, right? So that real-time data will be automatically posted to your REST API function. So now that REST API function will receive that real-time incoming data, and then further based on whatever functionality you want to perform in Zoho CRM, utilizing that data that has come into CRM from the third-party application, that logic can be performed inside your REST API function itself. So these are the detailed steps that you require in order to handle inbound webhooks as part of your Zoho CRM extension. So next we'll be seeing an example use case which involves the steps that are required to create the inbound webhook. So we'll be discussing how you can configure the event, how you can get the callback URL, how you can get the callback URL via the REST API function, and so on. Yeah, so next we're going to enter into our example use case. So for our use case, we've taken an integration between Zoho CRM and Zoho Desk. So our integration is going to be such that whenever a new contact is going to be created, new contact or new customer is created in Zoho Desk, we are going to use this Webhooks feature to go ahead and create that contact as a potential lead in our Zoho CRM. So the event over here is going to occur in Zoho Desk, which means Zoho Desk should have the support for Webhooks. Yes, Zoho Desk has the support for Webhooks. So whenever the contact is created, we are going to have that real-time data be posted into Zoho CRM using the Webhooks feature. And based on that real-time data regarding the contact that we get in CRM, we are going to go ahead and receive the data that we require alone and have them created as a potential lead inside CRM. So along with this Webhooks feature, as an enhancement to complete this use case in like an overall flow, we've used the signals feature available in CRM extension developer platform as well. So this signals feature help you to get real-time notifications. So just like how webhooks help you with real-time data updates, signals help you with real-time notifications whenever an event occurs in Zoho CRM. So here in our example, we know that after the contact is created in Zoho Desk, through webhooks, we are going to get the data and create a potential lead in CRM, right? So now a new lead has fallen into Zoho CRM from Zoho Desk. So we can go ahead and notify the CRM end user who is going to handle the CRM account that a new lead has entered into their account using this signals feature that is available in the extension developer platform. So just to give you all a little more detail on what signals are, as I mentioned, signals are going to help you with real-time notifications in your Zoho CRM. And these just don't have to be notifications alone. They can be actionable alerts. So on click of the signal, you just don't have to get a message stating a new lead is entered into CRM. Along with that, you can also have some actionable alert, like let's say you can have a redirection link on click of which from CRM itself that end user can be taken to the Zoho Desk page where this contact or the customer has been created. So this kind of action can also be achieved using the signals feature. And this signals, when you're having actionable alerts, they can have some data that is integrated from the third-party application as well. So just like how we discussed, the redirection link is going to take you to the data which is available in the third party, which is going to be Zoho Desk, right? So signals can be notifications, which can also be actionable alerts that include data from the integrated third-party application as well. So this is just a gist on the example use case and what signals are. So I've just included a visual representation as part of this slide. So whenever a new contact is going to be added in Zoho Desk, using our webhook, we are going to have them created as a new lead in CRM. So after the new lead falls into Zoho CRM, we are going to use the signals feature to notify the CRM end user that a new lead is entered into CRM from Zoho Desk. So along with this, I've just included some sample outputs so that you can relate better to the use case we're discussing. So this is my Zoho Desk page where we can go ahead and create a new contact. So I'm adding a new contact over here. So I'm providing some essential details like first name, last name, the email, and in the type I'm going to give prospect. So while you're adding a contact in Zoho Desk, there are two types of contacts that you can add. It can either be paid contacts or it can be prospect contacts. So for our use case, only if the contacts are of the type prospect, we are going to have them considered as a potential lead in Zoho CRM. So prospects are generally itself potential leads, right? So any contact is going to be added in Zoho Desk with the type prospect. That contact related data is what we are going to take and we are going to have them added as potential leads in Zoho CRM. So as soon as the contact is added in Zoho Desk through the Webhooks feature, that contact will be created as a new lead in Zoho CRM. So along with that, we are going to have a signal raised which will provide us with real-time notifications. So this bell icon in CRM is what helps you with this signal feature. So on click of that particular signal, you can get a notification stating that a new lead has entered into CRM from Zoho Desk. So I mentioned, right, you can also include some actionable alerts. So I have a term over here which is lead source, on click of which I'll be taken to the Zoho Desk page where this contact is available. So the source of this particular lead is from Zoho Desk, right? So I've just given the term as lead source, on click of which I'll be redirecting them to the Zoho Desk page where that contact is available. So this is the sample output screenshots of how our example use case would function. So here, essentially for our use case, the core concept is webhooks, right? So to handle webhooks as part of this use case, we've just depicted a visual representation over here. So we have Zoho CRM and Zoho Desk which are being integrated. So Zoho Desk is the application where this webhook has to be configured, since the event of adding a new contact is going to be done in Zoho Desk. So to create a webhook, you'll have to configure the event as addition of a new contact, and along with that, we need to have the callback URL configured. So we are going to get the callback URL from CRM only, right? So we saw that in CRM, you can get this callback URL through a REST API function. So we'll be creating a REST API function in CRM, and from that REST API function, we will get a URL which is going to be a callback URL. So that callback URL is what we will be configuring or subscribing while we are creating the webhook in Zoho Desk. So once we create the REST API function, get the callback URL and configure that in your webhook creation, the webhook will be successfully created. So whenever the event that you've configured as part of the webhook, right, that occurs in Zoho Desk, that is whenever the new contact is added in Zoho Desk, that real-time data regarding that contact will be posted to your REST API function. That is, it will be posted to the callback URL, which is essentially a REST API function. So you will get the data in a JSON format only, and the data will be posted to your function inside this argument called as CRM API request. So in the REST API functions in CRM, we will have an argument called as CRM API request. That argument is what will receive this real-time data from Zoho Desk into CRM. So from this argument, you can go ahead and fetch the data that you require, and then go ahead and have that converted as a lead, converted or created as a lead in Zoho CRM. So this is how the webhook will be handled for our example use case that we just discussed. So ideally, to achieve all this as part of our extension in a Sigma platform, we would require certain major components, right? So those are the components which are jotted down over here. So first, we would require a connector. So since data is going to be pulled from Zoho Desk into Zoho CRM, it means that data transfer is going to occur between these two applications. So that data transfer has to be secure, and in order to establish this secure data transfer, this connector feature has to be created. So we've discussed about creating a connector in detail as part of one of the earlier Extensions 101 webinar series itself. So you can always refer to the resources section available in Zoho community and check out the post or the webinar series on connectors to get a detailed experience on how you can create a connector as part of your CRM extension. So you'll be creating a connector to integrate Zoho CRM and Zoho Desk. So once that's done, the second important component is to create the webhook. So we have to configure the webhook in Zoho Desk, and as I mentioned, Zoho Desk has the support for creating the webhooks in the form of an API. So let me just take you to the Zoho Desk documentation. So this is the API which is available in Zoho Desk in order to create a webhook. So this is the URL, and along with that, certain important details need to be passed in order to create the webhook in Zoho Desk. So the details that Zoho Desk requires is to provide the event. So here the event on occurrence of which this webhook has to be triggered has to be configured inside the subscriptions key. So Zoho Desk requires you to provide that event on which this webhook will be triggered inside your subscriptions key. So there are multiple events that you can configure inside the subscriptions key, but for our use case, we want this particular event as addition of a new contact, right? So whatever events are supported for webhooks in Zoho Desk are provided as part of the Zoho Desk help documentation itself. So you can see multiple events are supported. Our case is going to be addition of a contact. So when you click on that event, over there itself you have the event type key. That is what event key should be provided under the subscriptions key while you're creating the webhook. So this contact add is what we'll have to provide for our use case while you're creating the webhook as part of the subscriptions key. So that is the event that we'll define over here. And along with that, there are certain other details like the name of the webhook, the description of the webhook, and other important parameter, that is mandatory parameter that we would require is the URL. So we have to configure the callback URL, which is going to be the point in Zoho CRM, which is going to receive this real-time data about the contact, right? So here they've given a sample URL. For our example, we'll be getting the REST API function URL and configuring that as a callback URL while you're creating the webhook in Zoho Desk. So I just wanted to show you all how or what support is available in Zoho Desk to create the webhook. So let me just go back to our slide. So as I mentioned, you have to configure the webhook in Zoho Desk through this webhook API which it supports by providing the event as contact addition and configuring the callback URL, which we will be obtaining from the REST API function in the CRM extension. So that is the second important component. And the final component is going to be signal. So for our use case enhancement, we are using the signal component to get a real-time notification as well. So this real-time notification, right? This whatever real-time notification you're getting through signals, when you're handling signals, there are two major steps that you need to perform. So signals are basically segregated into two steps, which is going to be defining the signal and raising your signal in a REST API function. So you'll have to create a signal and define a signal first in your CRM extension, and then that signal has to be raised as part of your REST API function. So why are we raising the signal in the REST API function itself? Because after the event occurs, that is the contact is created in Zoho Desk, we are going to get that real-time data into our REST API function. So in that real-time data, we are going to fetch the details that are required and have that created as a lead in Zoho CRM. So only once that lead is created into Zoho CRM, we want to notify the CRM user that a new lead has entered into CRM, right? So as part of that REST API function itself, we are going to be raising the signal to provide a real-time notification to the end user. So these are the components that you would require for our use case to achieve the use case that we just discussed. So I've set up all these components as part of an extension in my Sigma platform. So I'll be showcasing how we can create each of these components and how we can obtain the callback URL and all. So I'm just going to enter into my Sigma platform. So I've already created an extension. Yeah, so this is the extension that I've created called as Desk Sync CRM Signal, where I've set up these components that are required for our use case. So here you can see that the first component that we wanted, right, was a connector. So this connector section, I have a connector created for Zoho Desk. So here I've created multiple APIs, but for our use case, we would require the create webhook API alone. So the connector is to establish an integration between CRM and Desk, right? So we've created a connector for Zoho Desk, and since Zoho Desk supports this webhook APIs in the form of creation of a webhook in the form of an API itself, we've created an API inside the connector to create a webhook. So I've configured the details over here. So I've given the name of the connector and the URL that was required by Zoho Desk to create a webhook. So along with that, if you remember, we require certain important parameters like the event configuration and the callback URL configuration, right? So we saw the event key has to be given inside the subscriptions parameter. So inside subscriptions, I've given the event as contact add. Then I've provided a name for the webhook and a description for the webhook. And the URL is going to be the callback URL that we get from our REST API function. So this callback URL is something which is going to be unique, because whenever the contact is going to be created in Zoho Desk, that contact has to be created as a lead in the Zoho CRM user who's installing the extension, right? So essentially that callback URL point has to be unique for every user. So whenever we want to handle some dynamic parameters as part of our connector API configuration, we can do that using this format. So you can use $ followed by curly braces and then define a parameter over here. So since our callback URL is going to be dynamic, which I'm going to handle at code level, here I've just gone ahead and configured a dynamic parameter over here for that. So all the other values are static. The event is configured, the name and the description is given. The URL alone, we've just configured it as a dynamic parameter. So I'll next go ahead and show you how we can get this callback URL and handle it dynamically. So here we've just configured the API to create a webhook in this connector. So essentially this API has to be invoked at some point. So only wherever you're invoking this API, at that point of time only this webhook will be created in Zoho Desk. So this is just the setup that we've done. You have to invoke this API at some point in order to go ahead and have the webhook created in Zoho Desk. So this is the first step. Going forward, we will see how we are getting this callback URL and how we are going to invoke this API to create the webhook in Zoho Desk. So I've created a connector and configured the API to create a webhook in Zoho Desk. So after that, we have to get this callback URL, right? So to get the callback URL in your CRM extension, you need to create a REST API function. So I'm going to this automate section in the left panel, and then I'm going to go ahead and click on this functions section. So when I click on functions, you're going to go ahead and click the new function button. So you can provide a name for the function. The namespace will be automatically populated. And this invoke as REST API, right? You have to go ahead and enable the yes option for invoke as REST API. So if you keep it as no, then this function is going to be just a standalone function. We require a REST API function because only REST API functions can provide you with a callback URL. So I'm going to give the option as yes. So as soon as you give it as yes, you can see that the REST API function will have an argument called as CRM API request with the map type. So when I was showing the visual representation in the slide, if you remember, I had mentioned the REST API function will have an argument called as CRM API request, which will only receive the real-time data from the third-party application. So I have gone ahead and already created a REST API function in the same format that we just discussed. So after I give the name and invoke that as yes for REST API, this function will be a deluge editor for the function will be opened up. So the name for the function will be created, and you'll have this argument called a CRM API request. So the editor will be blank at the first point of time. So we've just handled the code logic, but initially once you create the function, this section will be blank. So you'll just have the name for the function, and you'll have this button called as invoke as REST API, on click of which you will be getting the URL which is available as part of this REST API function. So you'll have two URLs, one for the sandbox and one for your production. So if you want to test out this function in your local sandbox environment, you can use this URL. If you want to use it when it's going to be installed in a production account and tested as part of another user's account, then it has to be done with a production URL. So this is the callback URL that we will be using. So I'm just copying this URL and I'm going to paste it over here to show you all the details. So here, as part of this URL that we've received, right, the callback URL that we received as part of the REST API function, you can see until this section, they're all static values. So the URL is static. You just have the namespace for the function. The auth type is API key. And until the ZAPI key portion, the value is static. But this ZAPI key, which has to be appended at the end of the URL, that is given as a dynamic parameter. So this ZAPI key will differ for every user who's going to install the Zoho CRM extension. So only if their ZAPI key is appended to this callback URL, then as soon as the contact is created in their Zoho Desk account, then the new lead will automatically fall into their Zoho CRM account. So we saw that we can create a REST API function and we can get the callback URL from the REST API function using this invoke as REST API button. So next we are going to go ahead and see how we can get this ZAPI key parameter in a dynamic format for every end user so that it can be appended to this callback URL to get a dynamic callback URL which you can configure inside your webhook creation connector API that you've created. So I've got the callback URL. Next I'm going to go ahead and handle that dynamically to get that ZAPI key. So in your CRM extension, you have the option to write scripts either on installation of an extension or uninstallation of extension. Similarly, you also have a script that you can write where on authorization of a connector if you want to perform some functionality, or on revoking the connector's authorization if you want to perform some functionality, then we have support to write scripts at that point of time. So for our example, I have taken the script for on authorization of connector. So we've created a connector for Zoho Desk inside which we have handled the API for creating a webhook in Zoho Desk. So we've set up that configuration, right? So let me just go ahead and we'll have that tab also next to this so that we can parallelly look into both the connector API and the configuration script. So I'm opening the connector. So if you remember, this was the API that we've created inside the connector where values are available, certain static values are provided, and this URL alone is going to be dynamic. So I've given it in the dynamic format. So this callback URL is what we are obtaining from the REST API function. But in the REST API function callback URL, we have the ZAPI key that we need to get in a dynamic format. So to get that in a dynamic format, on authorization of this connector itself, I am going to write a script. So whenever the end user installs this extension, they will be prompted to authorize the connector for Zoho Desk that you've created. So when they authorize this connector, this script will run. So as part of the script, in Zoho CRM, we have a script to get the ZAPI key of the end user who's installing the extension. So I have taken that script and used it over here. So these first 3 lines will help me to fetch the ZAPI key of the end user who's installing the CRM extension. So now I have the unique ZAPI key for the end user who's installed the extension. So that ZAPI key, I'm taking it and appending it to the callback URL which we obtained from the REST API function. So this was a callback URL that we got, right? So until this was a static value. So those static values I've hard coded over here, and along with that dynamic ZAPI key which I'm going to get when the end user installs the extension, right? That value is appended over here. So now my callback URL is complete and it's unique for every user who is going to install the extension in their CRM account. So I've got the complete callback URL which is going to be dynamic. So now this callback URL has to be passed to this API, right? So this parameter alone is dynamic. So if I pass this parameter, after I pass this parameter, only I'll be able to invoke this Webhook API so that a new webhook can be created in Zoho Desk. So I am invoking this Webhook API on authorization of the connector itself. So when the end user authorizes the connector, the ZAPI key will be fetched for them. That will be appended to the callback URL of the REST API function. So I get a dynamic callback URL. So I am passing that dynamic callback URL to the URL parameter and invoking the connector API that we've created. So I mentioned, right, that was just the connector setup that we've done over here. This API has to be invoked at some point. So only when it's invoked, that webhook will be created. So we are invoking this connector API to create the webhook on authorization of the connector itself. So whenever the end user installs the extension and authorizes the connector, this Webhook API to create a Zoho Desk webhook will be invoked and a webhook will be successfully created. So here the event to be configured is done. That is, contact addition was already done in the setup. We wanted the dynamic callback URL. To get that alone, we've handled that dynamically over here and invoked that API. So the major step, which is creating the webhook in Zoho Desk for the event contact addition, has been done. So that's how we've handled the connector and the webhook configuration. So in the steps itself, we discussed that as soon as the webhook is created, right? What happens whenever that event occurs, that real-time data is going to be posted to your REST API function. So after you get that real-time data inside your REST API function, so this was the REST API function, right? So we will get the real-time data inside this argument called as CRM API request. So once that contact related data comes into this function, we can go ahead and perform further functionalities that we want to do utilizing that data from Zoho Desk as part of this function itself. So for our use case, we want to create a new lead in Zoho CRM after we get the real-time data update from Zoho Desk, right? So now inside this argument, I have the data about the contact in Zoho Desk. So using this particular argument, I am further fetching the related details. So from CRM API request map parameter, I am getting further details that I require regarding the contact that's obtained from Zoho Desk. So the details like the contact's name, last name, the type. So we saw, right, there are 2 types, paid or prospect type of contacts that can be added in Zoho Desk. So only if the type is prospect, I want to have them created as a lead in Zoho CRM. So to make that check, I'm getting the type of the contact as well. Then I'm getting the email of the contact, the title of the contact, and then the real-time data that comes from Zoho Desk regarding the contact, right? They also provide us with a web URL. So the web URL is going to be the URL of the contact that is available in Zoho Desk. So I'm taking that URL also and fetching that and keeping. So I've taken the details that I require. So utilizing these details, I'm going to check if the type of that contact is prospect. So if they're of the type prospect, then I'm going to go ahead and construct these details in the format that I require and have them created as a new lead in Zoho CRM utilizing the create record deluge integration task in Zoho CRM. So utilizing the real-time data from Zoho Desk through the Webhooks feature, we've received the details that you require and we're creating a new lead in Zoho CRM. So the major chunk that we wanted to explain, right, that is the Webhooks feature which handles real-time data update to create a new lead in Zoho CRM is done. So we've got the data, we've fetched the required details and created a lead in Zoho CRM. So to complete the use case, we wanted to get a real-time notification as well, right? So to get that notification, we saw that a signal has to be defined and that signal has to be raised over here. So I've raised the signal over here. So before doing that, we have to define a signal, right? So let me just show you all where you can define that signal. So in this automate tab itself, you'll have the signals option as the last section. So you can go to the signals and the defining the signal is as simple as providing the name for a signal. The namespace will be automatically populated. Then you have to just upload a logo or icon for your signal. So where will this logo appear? So whenever you click on that bell icon, your notification appears, right, in CRM. So for that notification, if you want some logo, then that's what you have to upload as an icon over here. So since in our use case, that contact is going to come from Zoho Desk. So we are intimating the CRM user that a new lead has entered into CRM from Zoho Desk. So to make that intimation more proper, I've just included the logo as the icon of Zoho Desk. So this is how you can just define a signal. Just provide a name for the signal and an icon for that signal. So once the signal is defined, you have to just raise that signal, right? So as part of our REST API function itself, now that the first section, which is creating the lead in Zoho CRM is done, a new lead has now fallen into Zoho CRM. So now we can intimate the CRM user about that by raising the signal that you've created. So to raise a signal, you'll have to create a signal map. So to create the signal map, you have 4 important parameters. One is the signal namespace, which you'll get while you're defining the signal itself. Then the email has to be the email of the lead that has now been created. So here we are fetching the details from the contact and creating a new lead in Zoho CRM, right? So that email is what I'm putting over here for this email parameter. So what the signal will do is that it will check for the lead with this particular email if it's available in CRM. So a new lead would have been created with that email. So it will check for that lead and it will go ahead and notify the owner of that particular lead. So the owner of the lead, that particular lead will essentially be your CRM user who's handling that CRM account. So to do that, we have to pass the email of the lead. Then the subject and message are going to be just the notifications that you want to show as part of your signal. So I've given new notification over here and a new lead from Zoho Desk as the message over here. So while I was showing the sample output, if you remember, this place, right? As soon as you click on the bell icon, the prompt that appears over here, right? This is where the subject will appear. So the new notification will be our subject. And when you click over here on this particular notification, you will be prompted with this screen. So that's where the message will appear regarding your signal. So this is where your subject and the message will appear. So that's the details that I've given over here. So along with that, we wanted an actionable item as well, right? So you can just raise a signal as such by just creating a signal map and then using the invoke connector task to raise the signal. So that alone will just provide you with a signal notification. But if you want to include an action like the link, right, then an action map should also be constructed and passed to the signal. So along with these 4 parameters, another keyword called as action has to be provided and the action map details has to be constructed. So for our case, we are going to have a redirection link. So the type of the action is going to be link. The display name is going to be the keyword which is going to be hyperlinked, right? So in our case, I'm going to keep it as lead source and the URL is going to be the redirection URL which you need to provide as the link. So if you remember from the details that we obtained from the contact, Zoho Desk contact, there was a web URL which I fetched and kept it in a variable called as lead source. So that's the lead source URL which I'm passing over here. So this action map has been constructed and that has been passed to the action keyword in our signal map. So now the signal is constructed and an action also has been constructed with the signal, and completely the signal is now raised using this raise signal invoke connector task. So we have defined the signal and raised the signal as part of our REST API function as well. So this is the setup that is required to achieve our use case inside your extension in the Sigma platform. So let me go ahead and show you how this functionality works in real time in our Zoho CRM. So I've already installed this extension in CRM. So let me go to setup. So inside marketplace all, and I installed extensions. Yeah, so this extension called as Sync CRM signal has already been installed. So when I click on configure, so you can see, right, it's asking me to authorize the connector that we've created for Zoho Desk. So if you remember, on authorization of the connector only, we've handled the script to get the ZAPI key of the end user installing this extension, and we are appending that to a callback URL and then invoking the Webhook API of Zoho Desk. So all these functionalities will occur while authorizing this connector itself. So as soon as this connector is authorized, the webhook for Zoho Desk would have been successfully created. So connector is authorized successfully, which means that script would have run and the webhook for Zoho Desk would have been created. So now we are going to test our functionality. So what was the functionality? In Zoho Desk, whenever I create a new contact, I want them to be handled as or created as a new lead in Zoho CRM, right? So this is my Zoho Desk portal. So here I can go ahead and add a new contact. So I'm just adding a new contact. So let me just provide certain basic details. So I'm providing the first name, last name, and just providing the email for the customer. So after that, you have to choose the type. So I'm choosing the type as prospect over here. So after I provide these details, I'm going to click on submit. So now a new customer has been created in my Zoho Desk account, right? So essentially this customer should have been created as a lead in Zoho CRM for me. So let me go to Zoho CRM over here. Inside my leads module, you can see the test customer that we've created, right, in Zoho Desk has been automatically created as a lead in Zoho CRM. So this was the email ID we had provided as well. So the lead is created using the real-time data updates through the Webhook feature. And along with that, you can also see a notification, real-time notification using the signals feature has come. So on click of the bell icon, you can see, So here you can see the subject that we had provided has appeared over here. And on click of that, I get that prompt showing a message that we had provided, right? A new lead from Zoho Desk has entered into Zoho CRM. So I've also provided an actionable item called as lead source, which will redirect me to that Zoho Desk page where the customer is available. So you can see if I maximize the screen, this is a Zoho Desk page where the customer is available as well. So in this way, using the Webhooks feature, we've handled real-time data update from Zoho Desk into Zoho CRM, and we've also used the signals feature to get a real-time notification in CRM whenever that new lead has entered into Zoho CRM from Zoho Desk. So these were the two major concepts that we wanted to discuss as part of our extension use case today. So the session is completed with this.